Welcome to the Prepped and Polished podcast, the podcast that empowers you to take control of your education, featuring weekly interviews with influencers in the world of education, as well as tutoring tips, lessons, and updates. And now, here's your host, Alexis Avila.
And welcome back to the Prepped and Polished podcast. This is Alexis Avila, your host. Make sure to join our community. You can find us on all the social media channels like the SoundCloud, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Just type Prepped and Polished into the search bar and you'll find us. And go to preppedandpolished.com if you need tutoring or test preparation, both in person and online. And if you have a question or reaction during or after this podcast, email us at radio@preppedandpolished.com or visit our site and type your question into the chat box. Okay, let's get right to today's guest. So I have a special guest today. Today is on episode 194. I'm talking to Sensei Paul Castagno. He's a martial artist and owner of Revolution Martial Fitness. He's a 5th degree black belt multi-style martial artist. He's received his master level in Kempo, has extensive training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Kung Fu, Muay Thai. Sensei Paul trains weekly in both kickboxing and boxing and Jiu-Jitsu as well. And he continues to seek out continuing education from the best self-defense instructors in the industry. He's also one of the only Satori Alliance Certified Instructors in Massachusetts and is currently taking on the challenge and doing a great job, may I say, almost more than a half year into it, completing his ultimate black belt test challenge. Paul has a nonprofit organization where he supports community projects called Natick Soup. I'm going to attach the link to the show notes. On today's episode, you're going to be very inspired by Paul's exemplary leadership. And today he's going to talk about and give us some tips on how to be the best version of ourselves and be better leaders for ourselves and for our community. So let's get right to episode 194 with Sensei Paul, and I hope you enjoy it. Sensei Paul Castagno, thanks for coming on the Prepped and Polished podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me on. This is exciting.
Great. So let's start off. Tell us a little bit about your background and how your upbringing led you to where you are today as a martial artist and owner of Revolution Martial Fitness.
So, I mean, I had a pretty good upbringing. Like I had a great family and everything like that. I had great parents, great siblings, and I lived in overall I lived in a good community, but, when I hit probably 11, I really started experiencing a lot of bullying. Right. And so, and that was a huge part of my life growing up, was being bullied for quite a while. And the bullying continued for years, and it would, I felt like I kind of got singled out by at least one or two different kids every year, you know what I mean? And so that really kind of started to shift my personality. I used to be this happy-go-lucky kid. I was always friendly, and I was kind of outgoing and whatnot. And then when I started getting bullied, I really started to kind of pull inward. I started to get a little bit more aggressive. My kind of reaction to that was to have a chip on my shoulder, right? So it really started affecting my relationships with kids at school because I started kind of losing faith in their interactions with me. I always felt like people were kind of making fun of me. And I was probably even thinking that people were making fun of me when they weren't. I was really hypersensitive to, my interactions with my peers. And then when I was 14, it kind of came to a head where, I got into a fight. And it was a fight I probably could have stayed out of. Some kids were kind of picking on me, and I decided to kind of get aggressive. And, I felt like that was the only way for me that I really knew how to protect myself. And so long story short is this one kid and his 3 friends beat me up pretty badly and broke my nose, sent me to the hospital. And when I was sitting in the hospital, I was thinking, I was talking to my dad. We were waiting for the doctor to come in. I was like, Dad, I want to start martial arts. That's what I wanted. And my initial inspiration for wanting to start martial arts was because I wanted to learn how to fight. Like in my head, I was like,
Right.
well, if I jump by 3 guys again, I'm not like, this isn't going to happen. I'm not going to be the one that ends up in the hospital.
Right.
And my dad agreed. He was a martial artist growing up. He started me in martial arts, but he did kind of, preface it by saying, if you keep getting into fights, your training's done, And what was really interesting is, and I kind of agreed with him. I was like, yeah. Little teenager, I was like, yeah, okay. I just want to start martial arts,
Yeah.
And then when I started, I was around this really positive community. I had this instructor who believed in me. I kind of really took to the training, and then it really built my confidence. And then as my confidence grew, I didn't really want to fight anymore. I really started to kind of believe in myself. And as I went through like 15, 16, 17, I started progressing more. It really was a huge confidence builder for me. And it just affected every other part of my life. My interactions with kids got better. I had more like close friendships, and I started getting picked on less just because, and then eventually not at all. And I think that was part of just the way I was projecting myself out in the world. And it was huge. It was just so transformative for me. And I never really thought about teaching martial arts, but my instructor gave me an opportunity, asked me if I wanted to teach. And I thought, okay, sounds cool. I'll teach. And then about 6 months or so after I started teaching, I got this letter from a parent telling me how much of a difference I made in their son's life and how much of a positive role model I was. And that was like the moment for me when I went on, I might actually be able to change lives doing something that I love.
Yeah.
And then from day on, I was like, that's it. I'm teaching martial arts. This is what I'm going to do. And so I opened my own school at 23. I got the opportunity to open my own school at 23. And now we're here almost 13 years later. We're at 300 members. It's pretty surreal. We've been really well received by the community. And, for me, Revolution Martial Fitness is about revolutionizing the way that martial arts is taught while helping people become more mentally and physically fit to take on life's challenges. It's kind of the overarching philosophy and the reason behind the name. And I'm happy to say that I think I'm doing it. I think I'm just trying to be part of the village and positively affect as many lives as possible. So.
Wow, that's really inspiring to hear that, especially as a business owner who just, you go through the grind. But to hear that just like a nice flow from childhood, getting into martial arts to where you are now, it's nice to see that. Just obviously you have a passion for it. So on that note, tell us a little bit about what you offer clients who walk through your doors, and how do we contact you? And that
So, you can always find me online, revolutionmartialfitness.com. Is all the information's on there if you ever want to contact me about lessons. But, the overarching philosophy behind what we do is that we want to create a space where people feel challenged, but they feel supported. And we want everybody to know that, they're running their own race. Of course, we have, our main program, our martial arts program, which encompasses multiple styles of martial arts, both stand-up, striking arts and grappling arts. And it's a self-defense focused arts. We really want to make sure we're preparing people for self-defense. But it's really just the vehicle for showing people that they're much more stronger and more capable than they think they are, right? And that's for people of all ages. Like, everybody comes in, and one of the things that I love about martial arts is it has a way of kind of making you face whatever you're kind of insecure about, right? And what I want to do is create an environment where you feel like, everybody's giving you the tools to succeed, that your instructors and your classmates are on your side, right? And then through that, again, like I said, you can realize that you're much more capable than you give yourself credit for. And the kind of confidence that you see people build with that is just amazing to me. So that's really like the core of what we're trying to bring to the community is, we want solid martial arts training. We want to have people that are great at self-defense and feel confident in their skills to protect themselves. But, self-defense to me has a much broader term than just physical attacker, right? Defense against physical attacker. So if I'm helping people become more confident, believe in themselves, and feel more equipped to take on life's challenges. Like, to me, that's self-defense too. And that's what we want to bring to everybody who steps in the school.
Awesome. So in your TEDx video, you talk about bullying and how you talked a little bit about how you dealt with bullying as a kid.
Yeah.
Now, some kids who get bullied, they don't fight back for one reason or another. Maybe they're scared to. Maybe they're physically weak. What advice would you have for a kid who might fear like that confrontation and continues to get pummeled in school?
Well, I mean, there's many different forms of bullying, but I think the first thing that you try to help kids understand is that it's less a reflection of them and it's more a reflection of the person doing the bullying, right? I'm not saying that that knowing that just makes it easy, right? But if somebody feels the need to put you down, then that's more of a reflection of how they feel inside than you as a person, right? Because my experience is that if you're happy and you're feeling confident and everything, you don't want to make other people feel bad. You want to make other people feel just as good as you feel. So if you feel like you need to bring somebody down, right? If you feel you need to break people down and bully them, then there's something going on inside of you that isn't good, right? And so, having that perspective can help ease the blow, especially with verbal bullying.
Sure.
Physical bullying, however, I think that what people need to understand is that physical bullying, I don't actually even like to call it bullying. Like, once it gets physical, like, that's a crime. You know what I mean? Like, assault. Like, nobody should be doing that to you,
Absolutely. We don't talk enough about that.
No, I mean, like, he's being physically bullied. You're like, okay, so he's being assaulted is what you're saying. Like, don't sugarcoat. Like, that's what that is. It should be taken very seriously. And I mean, of course, we can tell people, like, maybe, doing something like self-defense or something that builds your confidence is huge. But make sure that if you are being bullied, that you're not keeping it a secret. Okay, that make sure that you're telling the people that you care about, that care about you, that you care about, that you trust, right? Tell your friends, tell your family, and don't feel ashamed to ask for help. There's so many people around you that want to help you. So look to the people that you trust and ask for help, and they're going to help guide you in the right direction. But a lot of bullying goes on, and kids are too ashamed or scared to speak up about it, and then they just suffer in silence. And then sometimes that's when you hear about really, unfortunate things happening, when it gets to be too much, and everybody goes, "What happened? We didn't know that this was happening." It's because the kid was never telling anybody. So my advice is make sure that you're talking to people. Don't be ashamed to ask for help.
Yeah, and that's really sound advice. And I was thinking like a lot of I mean, at least like knowing, like growing up with brothers, it was never considered cool to like kind of ask for help. Like you were kind of like, so it's important to kind of find like somebody like you can really count on. It might not be that brother. It might be
right.
Like a teacher who really likes you, I mean, I've had students come to me and talk to me about it, and they feel like I'm, it's like whoever you feel like you have a really good rapport with, it might be parents, might be your siblings, it might be your friends, it might be a teacher, but those people are going to want to help you, and I think it's even harder for men, only because it's the kind of the, it's like you're not, it's like get over it, what's wrong with you?
Like antiquated, hyper masculine, idea. But the reality is I think it takes more strength to ask for help than to suffer alone. And I think, you can't look at asking for help as lack of strength. You have to look at it as like the epitome of strength to be able to ask.
That's a really good point. It's a strong deed to seek help.
For sure.
It shows initiative. It's a good thing. So find somebody that you can trust.
Right.
And
don't
be
ashamed to do it. Yeah.
So in one of your mat chats, and you do a mat chat after each of your sessions, you told the group circle once that you said you are worth it, worth defending. And for me personally, I remember that being a very empowering moment. Why did you feel compelled to say that to your students?
My experience working with people, is that, once you get to really develop a rapport with them and you start to create a connection with them, you start to kind of find out what drives certain behavior kind of under the surface. And if, whether it be, a lack of confidence, a lot of it being either a lack of confidence and skill or, something like that. But, kind of the overarching theme seems to be like people don't think highly of themselves, and they don't think they're worth sometimes either defending, or they don't deserve success, or they don't deserve praise, or something like that. And the reality is like, you're worth it. Yeah, you're worth it. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing wrong with accepting success and basking in it. There's nothing wrong with feeling like you're worth protecting. I think that's the other thing too, is that like, especially when it comes to self-defense, especially physical self-defense, is to know that like you're worth standing up for, right? You're worth protecting, and once you have that mindset, I think it's really empowering, right? I think you take more initiative, and and when things come up and you think about either challenges that you want to overcome or success that might be coming your way or success that you want to have, when you can tell yourself that you deserve it and that you're worth it, then you're going to find that strength to push through any of the challenges that might come up on the journey there.
Absolutely. Become a better version of yourself and for your community.
Yeah, for sure.
So as a martial arts owner, practitioner, what are some of the myths about martial arts training that people should know about that just kind of come to your mind?
Yeah, the first one I love. This is the one I love, right? This is fun. Are your hands registered as lethal weapons? Like it's like, yeah, because when I got my black belt, there was a form I needed to fill out with the police department saying my hands are registered with okay. No, that is not anything that you have to do. Some people think it is. Yeah, it is a little. It's funny. I've had that question asked seriously. Do you have to register? I'm like, no, there's not a form you have to fill out once you get your black belt. I think that there's the other myth, I think, is that we can be hyper aggressive. People kind of look at us sometimes as an odd breed. They're like, why would you want to go do something so aggressive? And my experience, and I mean, speaking personally, is that martial artists, serious martial arts practitioners, we're like the most chill people in the world, because I think that a lot of people walk around with a lot of pent up stress and everything like that, and as martial artists, we get this cathartic experience a couple times a week where we just get to get that out of our system. So the rest of our lives, we walk around a lot more centered and a lot more, even keel, a lot more chilled out, so I don't, I think the myth that martial artists are aggressive people or really love like, confrontation and combat. It's like, no, we don't love it. We don't thrive on chaos. Do you know what I mean? Like, we enjoy the cathartic experience of martial arts. We love what it does for us, but as a general rule, we're pretty chilled out people. So
yeah, that's a really good point. And not only is that a myth, but you clearly teach that it's important to be yourself and calm down. Yeah. Like that very first day I went into the studio, everybody comes up to me and shakes my hand and smiles at me. And I'm like, what are these killers doing coming up to me? Yeah. I'm always expecting, something going to happen, but that clearly demonstrates that myth. It's just,
and I think one of the things about, and it's not universal, every school's a little different, but I think generally, one of the things about good martial arts training is that it gives you kind of a daily dose of humility when you walk in. And I think
absolutely
being humbled like that, whether it be, having a challenge, kind of picking up a technique and really having to work at it and face the fact that you got some work to do, or doing a little like sparring session and, maybe getting thumped around a little bit, nothing injurious, but, definitely you got a partner who gets the better of you. And, it's actually good to experience that because it keeps you humble in other areas of your life, and it doesn't let you get too big for your britches, and I think that also translates into a grit and a resiliency and perseverance through other challenges in your life too. So
that's awesome. So what are some of the from your experience, both practicing and working with kids, what are the main benefits of martial arts training?
Wow. I don't know if we have time for all of them.
Yeah, just give me some couple.
Okay. So the
Part
main
two.
thing, I mean, it kind of, I know I don't want to be redundant, but confidence is a huge one. Real confidence, not this, I receive false praise all the time kind of thing, but like,
Sure.
I overcame a challenge and I did it on my own. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And you had support, of course, but
like
at the
integrity,
yeah,
confidence.
integrity, yeah, and that confidence that you can, that belief in yourself, I think is really huge, and I think that, like, if I had to pick like the main ones, I think that's really huge, and I think that really encompasses a lot of the other things that a lot of the other benefits that I could talk about, but I feel like it's a great opportunity for people a couple times a week to sharpen that sword and to remind themselves how resilient they are and remind themselves how capable they are. And the confidence that comes with that is just, it's kind of magical, actually, to see the way it transforms people.
That's amazing. So talk a little bit about your Ultimate Black Belt Challenge. You took on this challenge.
Yes.
What is it? How is it going so far? And what have you learned that maybe you didn't expect when you signed up for it?
So the Ultimate Black Belt Test is the originator of the Ultimate Black Belt Test is a gentleman named Tom Callos. He's been a mentor of mine for a long time, and he's been running the Ultimate Black Belt Test for a long time. And basically, it's kind of an experimental test. What it is a effort to elevate the martial arts, the image of the martial arts, and the standards to which high-ranking martial artists hold themselves to, right? So I think that in the martial arts, the one thing about the martial arts world is that there's no kind of universal standard for martial arts instructors, right? There's no national governing body or anything like that. So instructors it's really up to the instructor to esteem themselves through their actions, right? And the Ultimate Black Belt Test really challenges school owners to lead by example. And so if you want to have really great students and students that are not just well skilled, but that are fit and that, get out into the community and use the values of the martial arts in the world to benefit the world around them, then you need to show them how to do that. And the Ultimate Black Belt Test is kind of a program or a challenge and a process to do that. So it's a year-long test, and there's physical requirements and there's non-physical requirements. The physical requirements are, consistent martial arts training, well-rounded. So make sure you're doing grappling arts and striking arts. So I train jiu-jitsu multiple times a week. I do boxing during the week. And, on top of that, it's 50,000 push-ups, 50,000 crunches, run 1,000 miles over the course of the year. So that's like 150 a day. You get the idea, like 3 miles a day. And the idea behind that is daily doses of discipline is how I've looked at the push-ups. Like the push-ups for me is not about like, oh, I'm going to get bigger arms doing 150 push-ups a day, right? Yeah, you'll get more fit, but it's more about, committing to doing something daily. And when you commit to doing something daily, there's inevitably going to be days where you don't want to do it, but you do it anyway because that's what discipline is, right? Discipline is doing something that you said you're going to do when the mood that you said it in is past. That's discipline, right? And so if you don't feel like doing it, that's when you have to do it. And that, again, is part of leading by example. And then the non-physical requirements is you have to journal every week. You have to journal about the process. You have to do a big wow project, which we did, Natick Soup, which you were a part of. So thank you.
That was amazing.
And so that was my altruism project, and you can find more about Natick Soup if you go to naticksoup.org. There's a website about that. And then you have to right 3 wrongs or mend 3 broken relationships. You have to profile 10 living heroes. Like there's all these other non-physical requirements that again serve to kind of demonstrate what it means to be like a master teacher, right? Because at the end of the day, style aside, titles aside, teacher teaches what the teacher knows. That's it, right? And the more you try to expand your horizons and the more that you put yourself out there and try to build your knowledge and your skill set and everything, the better you're going to be for all the people in your sphere of influence. That's really what it is. So, we're about 6 months in now.
6 months in, yeah.
Yeah, 6 months into the year. And it has been a really amazing experience. It's definitely not been all smooth, right? There's definitely
Sure.
ups and downs. And that was to be expected, but I think you don't really know how that's going to come when you start the test. You don't know where you know there's going to be challenges, but you don't know how they're going to manifest themselves. And I know that it's been everything from, I have a young daughter. I have a 1-year-old, and balancing, being a husband and a father with running my school and then meeting all these other requirements. Like, it's definitely been a time management challenge. I realize that I'm not as good at time management as I'd like to think I am. So it's definitely challenged me to manage my time better, to get more creative about how I fit in my requirements. There's definitely been plenty of days where I don't feel like I have the time, or I don't feel like I have the energy to fulfill my requirements, but I commit to doing them anyway, because that's what you have to do. That's discipline. And I've realized that I'm capable of a lot more than I thought I was, because you go into the test and you're like, I think I can do all this. Like, you don't take it on if you think you're going to fail.
Right.
But then as you're going through it, you're like, oh, like, what did I get myself into? But one of the rules of the test is you can't quit. Like, quitting is not an option.
Yeah, you mentioned
as soon as
that.
you start, that's it. You can fail, but you can't quit.
Right.
That's it. So, right, as Tom says, failure's an option, quitting is not. So you get it done. You find a way, and you realize that when you're fully committed to something, right, when quitting is not an option for you, and this is something I've talked to the students about, when you can convince yourself, when you can tell yourself that quitting is not an option, you'd be really surprised at how resilient and creative you can be when it comes to overcoming challenges, right? And meeting, like, when you really put that out of your head, like, quitting is just not an option, so what else is an option? And it's really amazing what you can achieve when you can convince yourself of that.
That's amazing. And in fact, you've actually inspired quite a few of your students. I don't know how many have come out with some spreadsheets, but we got a adult student who's doing push-ups and sit-ups every day and doing the cardio.
Are you talking about yourself? Because you're doing a little too, right?
I'm not. This is your show.
I'm going to toot your horn.
But if you want to turn it around, I mean, we started. It's my spreadsheet is entitled the Orange Belt Challenge. So I was just like, my goals were very low. I was going to do the push-ups and sit-ups and 1.5 miles cardio a day. And honestly, that's turned into about 25 line items of daily discipline goals. It's maybe the best version of me. It's been
I'm proud of you, man.
It's been a game changer.
I'm honored to be a part of that, for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm not sure if you have anything to say about this, but I just thought of you. But we got a lot of social media addiction, video games. Losing a lot of your time that you can't get back, especially the online bullying and stuff. People getting caught up in like what other people are doing, and you work with a lot of kids.
Yeah.
What are some healthy ways to get your time back and get back on track in this digital age?
Man, well, I think that the first thing, is that you need to make sure that you are limiting distractions for yourself. Like, you need to, whether it be, for adults who, find themselves constantly on their phone or on some sort of screen time, is you really just have to commit yourself to, like, getting rid of the distraction, right? Like, don't say, well, I'm not going to pay attention to my phone, but then keep it in your pocket, right?
Right.
Like, if you're not going to pay attention to your phone, then put your phone somewhere else where it's not going to be tempting you, right? I think a lot of people, they want to have willpower when it comes to certain things, but then they constantly have the temptation around them all the time. And part of having really good discipline and willpower is, just eliminating it, right? It's kind of like, if you don't want to eat junk food, don't keep junk food in the house. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's a lot easier to have discipline when you do that. And I think for kids, I think that we need to remind them and remind them how to be bored, right? Like, it's okay to be quote unquote bored. There's actually been a lot of studies that have come out. I was actually listening to TED Radio Hour, is another, a podcast that I really enjoy, and they were talking about attention, and it was a great podcast, and they were talking about that, that being bored is, and letting your mind wander is actually a really good thing. And I think kids nowadays, they don't know how to be bored. It's like if they have to wait, they're on a screen. And I get it. I get that for parents, it can be a lot easier. Okay, well, if I give them a screen, then they'll be quiet. I understand that.
Right.
But you got to teach them how to be bored constructively, right? Give them some guidance on what they could be doing besides just being glued to the screen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that, and if a kid says, "Well, I'm bored," okay, well, it's fine, And kids are really creative. They don't need all of this crazy technology to entertain themselves. You can put two kids outside with a stick and they'll come out with a game. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Kids play when they don't have that temptation around is really amazing. So I think, part of it is for adults, right? Making sure that you're limiting those distractions, maybe even committing yourself to the weekend or a day where you're technology free, and see what that does for you. Right. And then for kids, it's really just about, making them understand that it's okay to be a little bored. Right. But it gives them time to daydream, and it gives them time to find other ways to entertain themselves, and creative, maybe non-structured play is actually really healthy for kids. So that was
awesome.
Life for that. Yeah.
Paul, who are some of your mentors growing up and today, and why do you look up to them for their guidance?
Tom Kalos, who I already talked about, who does the ultimate black belt test. He's a mentor of mine, and the reason that I look up to him is he holds really high standards for martial arts instructors. And he is really a no BS kind of guy, right? If you're not living up to your full potential, he has no problem calling you out on it. And if you, and I really appreciate that. I like being people around that, because they make sure you don't settle for less than your best. Another person in the martial arts world who I really look up to is Dave Kovar. I know you met him recently as well when he was at the school. Really great guy. And what I really liked about Dave Kovar is he walks his talk. That's what he walks his talk, both in the way that he trains in his martial arts, the way that he runs his businesses and his schools. I've always looked up to him and his organization in the way that they run their programs, high quality programs that are, that run their businesses ethically, which I think is really huge for me. I really look up in general. I really look up to people who have strength of character. It's if you're successful, quote unquote, in business, that's great. But if you don't have a character that I can really respect, then, how much you think doesn't matter to me. You know what I mean? So, as far as the martial arts world, those are people that I really look up to, that are really, in my sphere of influence and or influence me. And then, of course, I look up to my family, and I look up to my parents and my mom and my dad for, and I know it might be kind of cliche, but I really do look up to them, because they've taught me a lot through their example, hard work ethic, being kind to people, without their influence, I think it's really, it shows in the way that I run my business too. I think a lot of their influences really shape the way that I run my school, and I really appreciate them for that.
That's amazing. And it, your mom, I know, passed away when you started, and she gave you a lot of great advice from your TED Talk. You can hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, she passed away about 3 months before I opened the school. So it was a pretty, it was a transition. It's trying to process her death, and then open a business. It was really a tough experience, which I talk a little, like you said, I talk more about it in my TED Talk. But what I did, and kind of the way that I processed that, is I told myself that I would honor her memory by the way that I run my school. And so I always, whenever I think about the next step to take, right, I always think about, and how to treat clients and everything. I always think about, if my mom was around, would she be proud of me, right? Would she, because she was always the kind of person who also didn't care how much money you made or how successful, quote unquote, your business was. If you didn't treat people right, then she didn't have respect for you. And I think about that, right? And I think about the fact that, not only do I want to have a successful business, but I want to do it in a way that puts people first. And so that her influence has been huge in the growth of the school.
That's awesome. And then one thing, that strikes me, there's something to be said about your dad, because he was a law enforcement police officer, but he was also in a band. And what that tells me is that he was kind of like, he had like a couple different sides to him.
Yeah,
which might have been it's a refreshing thing to hear.
Yeah. It was actually one of these things where when I grew up, I only knew him as a police officer. So I always thought of him as kind of, he's a little more strict, and, being a police officer changes you, right? You see a lot of stuff. And then I find out when I get older that he was in this band in the 60s called the Apple Pie Motherhood Band. You can actually look him up on Spotify. They got some albums on Spotify.
That's amazing.
And I was like looking at, you got the album cover at home stuff. I was like, man, you were cool. I was like, oh my God, my dad was really cool. You know what I mean? It was pretty cool. But yeah, he definitely and he was a martial artist too, on top of that. So
wow. So he wasn't kind of like your typical. He was a law enforcement, obviously strict, but he kind of had like a creative side, like a softer side. Maybe kind of instilled that in you.
Yeah. He was strict, but he was never unreasonably strict.
Nice.
And there was a lot of times where, when I was a teenager, I'd be like, I can't believe he's doing this or making me do that or saying this or saying that. Yeah. And then as I get old, now that I'm older, now that I'm 36, I'm like, oh no, that made sense. And that is maybe kind of a message to parents, right? Is that your child might not always appreciate all your decisions in the moment, but, in the future they will, and they'll look back and go, no, that was the right call,
Yeah, definitely. So what are some of your future goals for Revolution?
The goal right now, so my goal was to hit 300 students before the end of 2018, and we did that. We've already done it, and
wow.
And that that was a good kind of number. We just moved to a brand new location about a year ago, and that was kind of my goal for myself, and the fact that we hit that goal was really surreal to me. And so my focus right now is not actually on growth, like student count wise. It's really about making sure that all the other aspects of the program are solid. So making sure that, we're increasing, we're bettering the experience for the students here at the school and constantly looking on ways to do that. And then growing a team. I think I did it by myself for so long. And just within the last couple of years, we've really been growing our team here at the school, additional instructors, new program director, like all that stuff. And I really, I look at my path now as still inspiring students and still teaching. I love that. But maybe being able to mentor other people who have a passion for the martial arts and helping them make a career out of it. Because I find so much joy in what I'm doing. Like, I'm so happy and so thankful. Sometimes I feel like I hit the lottery,
Yeah.
And I try to make sure I keep that sense of gratitude. And if I can mentor other people towards that path and help them find the same joy in their career that I have, like, that would make me so happy. So that's kind of the focus right now, is to really grow our team and build our team. And maybe the growth of the school comes with that. Maybe it's additional benefit, but it's not our main focus. We really want to focus on our team.
That's awesome. So any advice for teens listening to us today who are getting ready to cross that bridge from teenage to young adulthood? Anything that comes to your mind?
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is don't be afraid to fail. That's my big one. Okay. Is, don't be afraid to take chances and challenge yourself, and don't be afraid to fail. I think fear of failure keeps people from really realizing their full potential, because, they never really get out there and try if they think they're not going to be able to achieve it. And the reality is you don't get better from doing things that are easy, right? You get better from doing things that are challenging, right? And I would also, like, there's a saying that I really like, which is there is no failure, there's only feedback, right? And so it's maybe not just saying like, okay, don't be afraid to fail, but maybe then adjusting that in your mind. And instead of saying, oh, I failed, say, oh, okay, I just got feedback, right? And you look at every experience as a learning experience. And if you learn from it, then you never really failed, right? It just gave you something to then take into the next challenge and the next experience so that eventually you can find success. So yeah, just remember that there is no failure. There's only feedback, right? And don't be afraid to challenge yourself, because that's how you're going to grow.
That's awesome. And then before I forget,
Sure.
line item like 15 on my spreadsheet is to read every day. And
Okay.
I got these 2 Dave Kovar books.
Oh man, look at that. That's cool.
So he wrote these great books, Brief Moments of Clarity,
That's awesome.
A
Man.
Dad's Tool book. I haven't gotten to that yet, but awesome reads.
Really
So let's wrap it up. But in your TEDx talk, you mentioned that, I just want to mention something, but
Sure.
you mentioned that behind the development of every great leader was someone who believes in the people when they didn't believe in themselves.
Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you from my experience, the way you interact at your school with the students, community, and positively inspire your students.
Thanks, man.
You are that leader that you mentioned.
Means a lot.
And I acknowledge you for that. So thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Thanks for your time on the Prepped and Polished podcast. And I'll see you on the mats tonight.
It was an honor, man. I'll see you later. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. And this wraps up our show. This was episode 194 with Sensei Paul Castagno of RevolutionMartialFitness.com. Episode 195 is coming soon, and we're creeping up to 200 episodes. Episode 195 will be our next tutoring tips episode, which will be the second part of a 3-part series on how to avoid 3 pitfalls of rhetorical skills questions on the ACT English test. To access all of our podcast episodes, head over to preppedandpolished.com/podcast, or you can go to soundcloud.com/preppedandpolished. Thanks for joining us on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Now go out there and take control of your education.